This book, our Constitution, protects our society and empowers us to govern. The protea leaves are us, the people, who freely elect our voices in Parliament. The drum calls the people of Parliament, through whom we govern together. And the sun is our country, healing our past, improving our lives, and energizing our potential. Together, our Constitution, our people, our Parliament, and our country are building our great South African nation. Parliament TV, Channel 408 on DSTV.
Dumelang, and welcome to Parliament TV on DSTV channel 408 and Parliament YouTube channel, coming to you live from Parliament TV studios on the Parliamentary Precinct, your eye to democracy. And of course, remember to join the conversation on our social media platforms at Parliament of RSA, and let us know what you think right here on Parliament TV, DSTV channel 408. It is, of course, your Parliament, your voice, your future. Libito laka ke Tshepo Mori, and today, safety, of course, is a concern in schools, and it persists. The persistence of learning inequalities remains serious national challenges. Now, the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Basic Education, Ms. Joy Maimela, turns the spotlight on these issues. She is here with us today to help us unpack the new regulations to the Bella Act, gazetted earlier this month, which focus on school capacity and admissions. Chair, thank you so much for joining us again right here on Parliament TV.
Thank you very much for having us. We're elated to be here.
Chair, let's jump straight into it, right? Let's begin with the bigger picture. What is the broader role of the Portfolio Committee on Basic Education in shaping and monitoring education policy beyond just passing legislation?
Thank you very much. I think that's a very important question to start off with. We are a committee of Parliament, so meaning we represent Parliament, and our role is to really hold the executive accountable. So in the Portfolio Committee on Basic Education, our role is to actually hold everyone that is within the sector accountable and to play oversight on the execution of their own roles. So we engage with, for example, different councils like your SACE, your Umalusi. We engage with the department, but also we engage with the PEDs, where really the implementation of various policies takes place at provincial level. So we do that by engaging with the department through weekly meetings, but also we conduct oversight. And oversight is one of the key tools we use to really execute this role.
Now, Chair, of course, the contentious Basic Education Laws Amendment Act now has been enacted and has been signed into law. Why was it necessary, and why are the regulations that are now being introduced, why are they being introduced at this stage?
Okay, after the ascending of the Act, there were two sections in the Act that were, if you remember, Section 4 and 5, that were a bit contentious. There were various stakeholders that came forward to try and contest those two sections. But also there are other sections in the Act that what regulations do is to clarify their implementation. So you actually assist stakeholders to understand how to implement those various sections of the Act. So that is the role of regulations. So the regulations do not change the Act. So what they should just do is to clarify how and simplify how the stakeholders should implement those provisions of the Act. Yes.
Now, with that, Chair, of course, the new regulations focus on school capacity and admissions. How do they balance community preferences with the constitutional principle of equal access?
And that is I mean, that is a question that is aligned to our concerns with the gazetted 2 regulations.
Yes.
Firstly, the one that speaks on admissions, for example. If you go to the Act, and remember you develop legislation to address a problem.
Yes.
So there was a problem in terms of access. And that problem really manifested through admission policies. So if you look at the regulations vis-a-vis the Act,
yes.
the regulation speaks about the HOD determining feeder zone. So, and if you look at the Act speaks about considering the education district. So the Act really broadens the consideration, the criteria to consider admission of learners. Whereas the regulations wants to take us back to now, just ensuring that the consideration criteria in terms of location is actually smaller. Now that is not in line with the principles of the Act. The principles of the Act is that you want to encourage inclusivity, maybe it's about just to really just take viewers through.
Yes.
What you were trying to resolve with that district education consideration is that you must understand the special development in this country was designed, and it was designed by an apartheid system.
Yes.
So you find certain sections of society by design were outside cities. So they could not by law stay within the cities. So they are within a district, an education district, not necessarily the feeder zone. Now when you say a feeder zone is one of the primary criteria for consideration of the placement of a learner, you're closing them out. And they have been closed out for many years.
Yes.
And that's what the Act was trying to correct. So that is why that is a concern for us. And of course, a balancing of parents' preferences as opposed to, of course, the applications, because parents apply to schools that they prefer based on the performance of the schools, but mostly also they take into consideration safety and academic, other extramural academic activities of the school. So in balancing, and this is what we've engaged with the department, is that you've got to really enhance the schooling system in a manner that all the schools, no matter their location, really have the capacity to have serious extramural activities, good infrastructure, safety, some form of a safety structure that is going to ensure that there's safety within the school, but also work towards capacitating the school management team to ensure that the school performs. That's all that drives parents' interest.
Yes.
And if you really enhance the capacity of the schools, all the schools, you will not have a problem where parents really would prefer one school over the other. Yeah.
Now, with regards to that then, Chair, of course, members of the public have until the 5th of September 2025 to submit their comments in terms of the regulations that have been gazetted. How will Parliament and the committee then ensure that this process is meaningful and that public voices are genuinely heard and they shape the final regulations?
Well, the regulations are primarily the process of the department. Our process is the bill and public participation and considering the comments. But even in this case, we are going to call the department because they must reflect and give us a report on this public comments process. So it is our responsibility to interrogate the comments that have been submitted, that have been received by the department, and to see if the department has incorporated some of the comments that really come out strongly, but comments that are also very critical and crucial to the implementation of the Act. So it is our responsibility to also get capacity, maybe legal advice, to really go through these comments and hold the department to account on the incorporation of these comments into the final regulation draft. So of course, the other thing is that we're making a clarion call, and we've really engaged in different community radio platforms, really calling out to all the stakeholders, the parents, the teachers, the SGBs, to comment empowerment to participate in refining these regulations, so that, because they are the end users,
Yes.
so they should be able to actually shape the final draft of the regulation so that they can be able to implement them.
And in that regard, Chair, of course, there's always been tensions around admissions, right? And it's always been a point of conflict between school governing bodies and provincial departments. How do these regulations aim to resolve this tension?
Look, the regulations, okay, maybe the Act itself, so takes the responsibility for admission policies and language policies to the head of department at a provincial level.
Okay.
So these are powers that were previously held exclusively by the SGB. So an SGB would decide what becomes the admission policy of the school, or what becomes the language policy of the school, and there will be nobody that had powers to veto that those policies. Now currently, it says the HOD is the one that has the final say on what becomes the admission policy of a school and what becomes the language policy of a school. And I think that is the most important intervention. It's important in a sense that departments have a responsibility to ensure that all these policies are in line with the values that are enshrined in the Constitution.
Yes.
Because those are the ones that we hold accountable. And I'll give you an example of some of this issues with admission policies. So you'd go, for example, and you engage with other stakeholders and parents, and they will tell you in certain schools the SGPs demand pictures of the learners, and the parents will tell you that they believe that is a tool to racially profile the learners when they choose who to accept, who to admit, and who to place in their school.
Yes.
So bringing the HOD and holding the HOD accountable for that responsibility really tries to intervene in such instances. Yeah.
Now, talking about racial profiling, Chair, in admissions, of course, like you mentioned, that there has been concern with regards to this. I cannot believe that people want pictures of children, especially in terms of ensuring whether they get admission or not. And it has been said that this is especially goes on in your former Model C schools, right? How is then the committee ensuring that the department acts on this and ensures that nobody is discriminated against and that there's fairness throughout the schools within the Republic?
Well, for example, one of the cases that we've just interfaced with as a committee, it's one in the Western Cape, where we've received various complaints from parents within the Western Cape about what they perceive to be racial profiling in terms of admissions and placements. And we've then officially tasked the Department of Basic Education nationally to conduct an investigation. And that is how we're going to ensure that indeed, if it is true there is a form of racial profiling, then this department must be brought to book. We said they must investigate, they must be able to go through the system because it's an online application system. Yes. Now, even if it's a centrally, it's a central application process, but the role to admit, the role of choosing who to place in the school still lies with the school itself and the SGB. So we said they must go and interrogate that process and come to us with a report on whether there is substance to these allegations, that there is some form of racial profiling. And that is what we can do as a portfolio committee. So this is one incident that we really just interfaced with here in the Western Cape. There was one school that we went to in the Northern Cape where we believed that you did not necessarily even need to conduct an investigation. You could just tell that even the forms are written in one exclusive language, Afrikaans, meaning that the school was really exclusively serving an Afrikaans community. So there is areas where we then issue some recommendations to the PDs, and we monitor those recommendations if indeed they are being implemented. Yes.
Now, Chair, of course, earlier when we started the conversation, we talked about the preference of parents when it comes to schools that they want their children to go to. And one of the requirements or the criteria that they have is safety of the school, right? Now, it remains a pressing concern. I mean, we've seen videos all over social medias, and whether it's bullying of learner to learner, whether it's violence from learner to teacher sometimes, or even teacher to learner, it's an issue that persists. Now, there are even weapons in schools where children carry weapons, whether it's guns, whether it's knives. It has become a violent environment when it's supposed to be an educational learning environment. What interventions is Parliament prioritizing to ensure safer learning environments?
Excuse me. Look, I fully agree that it is becoming a serious crisis. Not only are we seeing these viral videos, we've lost lives.
Yes.
There is learners who were stabbed to death outside the premises, just outside the premises of the school. But there is learners who were bullied in the premises of the school, and they will go home and commit suicide.
That's true.
It is becoming a serious crisis. And in our engagements in the committee, what we tried to do, I think it was the second meeting of the portfolio committee, where we tried to have a joint sitting with the portfolio committee on police and to bring the two departments together, but also the Department of Arts and Culture, to say we need a collaborative approach to dealing with school safety.
Yes.
And there is, of course, we've noted the signing of the school safety protocol by both the Minister of Basic Education and of Arts and Culture and the Minister of Police. But we are making a call to our own communities. The school environment really is a mirror of the community. So we're making a call to the communities that we need to come together as parents, as community structures. You've got CPFs. You've got different community structures that should really come and assist the teachers, assist the school management teams to really instill discipline, but also to deal with ensuring that the schools are a safe environment. For example, communities can help with each other with searches and seizures in the morning. And that can be done through some collaborative work within the community, through an agreement with parents, because the most important stakeholders is parents. You can try and search children, but if parents don't really consent, then you're also creating other measures. So we need to bring the community together. We need to really, it needs to be something that we put everything aside and we address, because we're going to lose more kids. But others, you don't even lose to the violence itself, but you also lose them in the schooling system.
Yes.
So others are too afraid to go to school, so they end up dropping out. Teachers who, you lose good teachers who feel the environment is no longer safe. So I am resigning and I'm going to stay at home. So it is really a concern. And we're hoping the safety protocol, of course, will come through, but we're making a call to the communities that we need to come together, all of us, to come up with means to really impact some meaningful intervention.
Now, Chair, of course, the Bella Act, of course, is central to everything with regards to schools. And some critics have argued that the Bella Act centralizes too much power in the state, limiting community voices. All right. How do you then respond to these concerns?
I don't think that's true. I think the Bella Act, because remember the Bella Act is just an amendment to the South African Schools Act.
Yes.
So the South African Schools Act is still the act, the main act that really governs the schooling system. So the Bella Act really just balances the powers of the SGBs, because the SGBs still develop the admission policy, for example, but it has to be checked. It has to be checked by the HOD. So, and the HOD has to then advise to say, you need to go and engage the parents further on these three aspects. We believe these three aspects are not in line with the Constitution, or we think that you actually have not incorporated certain aspects in your own policies. Go back and engage parents. So the role of parents is it's just balanced, because if you had, look, it goes even beyond the admission policies, the language policies. It also goes to financial management of funds, of school funds. So you had unfettered powers of SGPs who can decide what they do with allocated funds. And there would be no accountability because there's no piece of legislation that gives the powers to the department to really ensure that they've SGB accounts on how they've spent these funds. Now, the new provisions in the Bella Act compels the SGP to submit financial statements yearly, annually to the SGP. So there is a means also of ensuring that there is accountability and there's monitoring on how school finances are being handled. In other areas, you only intervene when the school is on the verge of collapse because there was no tool or mechanism to really monitor the utilization of funds.
Yeah. Now, with that, Chair, of course, it is August now, and schools have now started preparing for the admissions for the 2026 academic year. Now, provinces such as Gauteng continue to battle with overcrowded schools. They continue to battle with admissions. Now, will the Bella Act and, of course, the regulations now that have been published for public comment, of course, will they help ease the pressure this time for the 2026 academic year?
I do not think so. I think what will ease the pressure is the enhancement of the application process.
Okay.
And better planning. So we ought to have better planning. Both Gauteng and the Western Cape have been experiencing high migration from other provinces. So each and every year they've got a highest number of new learners that are coming into the system from other provinces. And that means we've got to have the ability for forecasting in our planning that on a normal year, this is the number of new learners that we receive. Now, how do we plan for that? So you can't act surprised and shocked every year that you're receiving new learners. By now, it's a trend that you should have studied and understood, and you find ways to plan better. And that's a call we've made to the two provinces that we can't complain about it every year. We can't say no. Our problem is that we've got migration, people are coming into the province every year. We ought to improve how we plan. So what the Act does, it deals with where there is a denial of access. So it gives the HODs powers to actually ensure that they force certain schools to take learners. Because there are schools that really just don't want to take learners, and they will hide behind their language policy. You know, our first language is this language, our language of teaching and learning is this language, so these learners can't cope. So it will actually give HODs powers to enforce placement of those learners. So it will ease a bit of pressure in that aspect, that they will have more schools now where they can place learners, whereas they did not have, especially in your Gauteng and the Western Cape, because that's where the pressures are. But also in other provinces, in your rural provinces, the schools in the cities, that is your former Model C schools, it is going to ease serious pressure on the provinces, this Bella Act, because the migration trends is the same in the rural provinces. People are moving away from rural areas. They are coming to the cities. So there's a rise in the middle strata who want to go take their learners to the fee-paying schools, which is your Quintile 4 and Quintile 5, which are the former Model C schools. And initially, HODs and provinces had their hands tied because they could not do anything when the school decides we're not going to take these learners. But now, with the Act, they are empowered to do something. And that's how it's going to ease the pressure.
Now, Chair, talking about rural schools, we know that they face their own unique challenges, and from under-resourcing to security issues, right? How are these realities then reflected within the Bella Act, and how is the committee highlighting them and ensuring that the department accounts in that regard?
One of the key milestone intervention that comes with the Bella Act is the introduction of grade R as a compulsory grade.
Yes.
Now, this for me, it's so central for your rural communities because in your rural communities, you don't have such a high uptake of ECD centers. So many children in your rural communities lose out 3 years of development, of a learning environment, because either there is limited number of ECD centers, but also remember the ECD centers, a parent has to contribute. So other parents don't have, so they don't necessarily take their children. They wait for them until they are of a school-going age, and then they start there. So that intervention speaks to the dynamic of rural communities. But also, one of the intervention as well being the issue of the cultural considerations. For example, the consideration on religious beliefs. And that was an issue a lot in the KZN area, where many learners will tell you that we go to a Shembe church, we can't cut our hair, and the school code of conduct says we must cut our hair. So those are some of the interventions that are really coming through to assist the different kinds of communities where the schooling system exists. The issue of infrastructure development, of course, if you bring grade R, now that you've made it compulsory, because these provinces were implementing grade R anyway, but it was not compulsory, so there was no budget allocation. Currently, there's budget allocation, so it is going to improve the infrastructure, especially for rural schools. It is also going to assist in capacitating the grade R practitioners. Some of them did not have the qualifications. Now there is a budget, you must actually capacitate those practitioners.
Now, Chair, finally, what is your message to parents, learners, the broader public, public servants, teachers themselves, in terms of the regulations that have now been gazetted, in terms of commenting? What is your encouragement in ensuring that their voices are heard and whatever concerns they might have can be addressed?
Our message is that it is very important that their voices are heard. When we say our founding principles that the people shall govern, and if you wait to complain later and you are the one that is going to be the end user of these regulations, you want to complain later, that will be too late. So it is very important that as an end user, you go through the regulations, you comment, you ensure that if you need to also, we were saying to SGB associations that you need to also take parents through these regulations so that they can individually comment, capacitate them, make them understand what you understand, what the regulations means, so that when we finally have the regulations finalized and they're implemented, every stakeholder in the community understand that I was part of making this regulation. So it's vitally important for all the stakeholders, including the learners themselves.
Yes.
Including the learners. They've got different learner associations, organizations. They should also find time to comment on the regulations.
Thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you very much for having us. We always enjoy having these sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Basic Education, Ms. Joy Maimela, and she was sharing her insights with us on the new regulations to the Bella Act, which mark a crucial step in addressing long-standing challenges of access, safety, and equality in our schools. Now, a reminder to you that the public, you have until the 5th of September to make submissions on the regulations. Of course, your voice matters in shaping a fair and safer education system for each and every learner. Now, you've been watching Parliament TV, of course, and this is your window to democracy. And from myself, Tepa Mori, and the rest of the team behind the scenes, take care.